Happy Tuesday. You are in the final weeks of our Deuteronomy Bible reading plan, and this last few weeks can feel a little bit like you're on a roller coaster. Some moments are really happy, and you're high, and everything's going well, because Moses is making these grand speeches about choose life, and it's going to go really well for you. And then in the next moment, it's like, but you're going to choose death, and when you do, here are all the cursings that can happen. And in between those moments, we get this one bright spot where Moses says, by the way, I know you're going to choose death, but don't worry. One day God is going to do something that makes it possible for you to choose life. And he uses this image that's really foreign for us, but would have been very common to the people he's talking to and to those who are steeped in the Hebrew Bible. This is what he says in Deuteronomy 30, verse 6. He says, and the Lord your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your offspring, so that you will love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, that you may live. And Elizabeth did such a good job talking about this in the email for this week, this image of circumcising your heart. It boils down to the reality that there's going to be something that has to happen internally in our hearts if we're ever going to become the kind of people who can choose life, who can be faithful and obey. And so for today's reading on Tuesday, we're fast forwarding thousands of years to when Jesus is on the scene. And he's going to say something similar, although not using that metaphor. He's going to use a different metaphor to talk about how our hearts will be circumcised. This is what he says in John 14, starting in verse 15. He says, if you love me, keep my commandments. And if we paused right there, that's a very similar message to what we're hearing in Deuteronomy. If you love the Lord your God, obey his commandments, follow the law. But Jesus then adds this, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to help you and be with you forever. Who is this advocate? The Spirit of truth. So Jesus says, obey the law. But by the way, I'm going to give you a helper, someone who's going to come alongside you and lift you up to guide you and shape you and show you the way that you should go. And who is this helper? Only the Holy Spirit. He says the Holy Spirit is going to be in you, to live with you. Just think about that for a moment. This Spirit that hovered over the waters in the beginning of the creation story, the one that has been with God from the very beginning, will be with God through the end of time. That Spirit, the creation Spirit, the breath, the ruach that God used when he created the universe, lives inside of you. And it is that Spirit that Jesus says is going to help us and empower us to be the kind of people who can be faithful to God. And if you're new to the Holy Spirit, if you have never even thought about what role does the Spirit play in my spiritual formation, this is the best image I've ever heard for how it all kind of works. Some of you may know a couple years ago, I tried my hand at having a green thumb, which I don't naturally have, but I tried to grow tomatoes. And I put them in the right soil. I gave them one of those wire things that they're supposed to use, like a trellis, to climb up. I fertilized it every once in a while, but I didn't account for one thing: spider mites. They decimated my tomatoes, and I tried everything in my power to get rid of them, and nothing I tried helped. Washing each individual leaf, spraying them with all these chemicals, nothing worked, and I never ate a single tomato that I grew. The squirrels either got them or the spider mites destroyed them before I ever even had a chance to enjoy the fruit that was growing. Our spiritual formation is a lot like trying to grow something. Because in the beginning, you have this seed, and you have control over a lot of different things that would help that seed to grow. Like some of the things I did: fertilizing it, putting in the right kind of soil, putting that pot or putting it in the ground where it's going to get enough sunlight, watering it just enough, not too much, not too little, and fending off the pests like the squirrels or the spider mites. In other words, you have a role to play in whether or not that plant grows. It's like what Jesus is saying: if you love me, keep my commandments. You have a role to play when it comes to being faithful to God. But at the same time, we can't do it alone. We can do all of those things, and whether or not that seed grows, whether or not it has life, is not actually up to us. There's something beyond us that is ultimately making that plant grow. We can create the right kind of environment for that plant to grow and thrive in all these ways, but whether or not it grows is actually not up to us. And again, the same is true for the Holy Spirit in our lives. We can create the right kind of environment for the Holy Spirit to come and transform us and bring life and bring fruit. But at the end of the day, whether or not we're able to change is not solely on our willpower alone. It's a partnership where we have a role to play and the Holy Spirit has a role to play, where we have to do tangible things to build habits and routines and rhythms into our lives to partner with the Holy Spirit. But the Holy Spirit is the one, Jesus says. It goes all the way back to the verse we read last week in Ezekiel 36 and to what Moses is saying, I'm going to circumcise your heart. That work belongs to the Spirit. It's our job to invite this Spirit in. And if you're not sure what that looks like, look at our Cultivate series. Every month, we're giving you a new practice to try and experiment implementing in your life as a means of inviting the Holy Spirit in, of creating space for you to be with God, for you to experience God's goodness and slow down your rhythms so the Holy Spirit can do the work inside of you that needs to happen. We're going to keep exploring this idea of the Holy Spirit all throughout the next year, starting with our Lenten season. Our Lenten devotional next year will be all about the Holy Spirit and the role that it plays in our life. But for right now, my hope is that you'll spend a few moments in prayer, just sitting in silence with your hands open and saying, Holy Spirit, come. Come do the work of transforming me from the inside out so that we can be the kind of people that will be faithful. Again, you have a role to play in your spiritual formation, but don't sleep on the role that the Holy Spirit has to play when it comes to transforming our hearts as well. We'll see you back here tomorrow.